Hey there, my name is Bret Malley, and I'm going to show you one really cool feature in Photoshop that I just love. For those that follow me and know my work, you know that I love Puppet Warp and all the different things you can do with it. In particular, I want to show you one feature that you can do with Puppet Warp where you're actually doing a rotation, if you can see my arm, a rotation around a joint rather than just simply moving these pins around, which can feel really fake and take a lot of sort of playing with just to get even a basic sort of change looking okay. So let's jump into this and take a look at this feature within Puppet Warp. It's really cool. Looking at the spider, we can see that this is the before image here, and this is sort of what we're going to go for, this rotation. I also did a little bit of color adjustments and other things as well, but we're going to focus on this one feature within Puppet Warp, as there's so many other things we can keep on doing to any image. So looking at this, the main thing with Puppet Warp that you need to know is you need your subject, whatever it is that you can be puppet warping, you want it to be separate. In short, separate out your subject and background. I'll just say generally, heal your background somewhat. It does not need to be perfect. Well, it depends on how much you're doing to it, but at least heal the background a little bit. We can see that's not a great sort of content aware fill, but it does the trick for what we're going for here. So I have the spider sort of separated out a bit, and then that background. That way, if I move it, there's not going to be another leg that's there. The next thing is, for non-destructive work, you want to make sure it's a smart object. So let's say you've done your mask work, and we don't see the mask necessarily on this one, but if I did have a mask, it would be about everything outside of that current selection that's there. Next, you're going to right-click and do Convert to Smart Object, and this allows it to take that mask and still use it, so you can edit it in the future by double clicking that layer. See, there's the original mask. We can see what it was without. There it is with it, and it's going to embed that almost as a mini Photoshop file within your overall Photoshop file. So that's really cool feature in itself. But again, we're not going to dig too deeply into that one. This is all to say, once you do say Convert to Smart Object, it will look like it just deleted everything out. However, if you look down in the lower right-hand corner of that little thumbnail, you will see that smart object icon. Cool, you're good to go once you have that. All right, so let's say you separate it out and you know how to do that. You just sort of skip to this part. This is the really neat part. This is where we use Puppet Warp. So if you go to Edit, if you can go up here and see what I'm clicking on, Edit, and you go to Puppet Warp, with that subject layer selected, you should see a mesh that goes all over whatever that subject is. If you don't see a mesh, not to worry. If you go up into the options bar, you should see a little checkbox for Show Mesh. Okay, so once you have that, Puppet Warp is really fun. Again, it's not used for everything, but some things it can be really helpful for. How we usually use it, right, is we make a few pins and we move things around, and you can really change the look and feel of it. In this case, we want to use most of the puppet pins for anchoring it down to not move. That way we can just move that one sort of leg joint that's there. So I'm going to add a few pins around in some critical spots. Usually this is sort of the outside, right, pinning it, and you can just test to see what's going to move and not move based on creating one on the outside there. So I saw a little bit of movement here, so I'm going to anchor that down. The next part, if you're going to have a rotation at that joint, it's actually going to be two different anchors, two different pins that you're going to be putting. One to make sure that it's anchored down, and another right next to it that's going to be the actual pivot. And don't do any after that, because otherwise you'd have to move that separately. So we don't want to do that. I literally want it to bend right there. Okay, so once I've done two next to each other and then a whole bunch that are just sort of anchoring it down, what's really cool, since it's a smart object, is I'll be able to go back into this since it's been done to a smart object, and Puppet Warp is one of those non-destructive features for a smart object. So that's cool. So I know going into it that I can keep on trying and experimenting. With that one joint that we want to rotate with that pin, I'm going to click on it so it's highlighted in blue, and then if you hold down Alt if you're on a PC or Option if you're on a Mac, you'll notice that you get this rotation ring around it. That is really neat. So this is where you can actually rotate it and make it really creepy. Hey there. Now it's waving to us. Cool. So now I can get just a bit more sort of action or creepiness into this really cool spider. Again, Alt/Option. And with that pin that's right at that joint, I can move this around, and none of these other ones are being moved. So that's the rotation feature within Puppet Warp. I hope you enjoyed that feature as much as I do. I find all kinds of fun uses. Sometimes the subject's arm was just bent the wrong way or even sort of ahead. Don't overuse it, but small uses, perfect, right? Less is more. So hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I'm Bret Malley. Be sure to catch me on the Photoshop Virtual Summit.